Good morning, everybody. I'm Leslie, manager of food entrepreneurship for Local First. I've been working here for about 3.5 years, and I had the opportunity to meet with some folks at the Arizona Department of Health Services to chat with them about the Cottage Food Program. There is some information available online for it, but there are still a lot of questions that people have, especially given what was not allowed on the Cottage Food Program previously and what is allowed on it now. So, Jose, if you can share screen access, I will go through my presentation.
You should be able to.
Cool. Let's see. Sorry, it is not popping up the one that I want. So, try different.
So Darius, I saw you put a question in the chat. I believe Leslie's going to go through that. But
About
if
labeling.
yeah, but if after that there's still a question, then we can address it.
Let it load. All right, sweet. Everybody can see, hopefully.
Yes.
Cool.
And now I'm hungry.
Awesome. So, cottage food law, why did it start? It was really available early on in 2011 for folks that made home baked goods and confections to be able to legally sell those. So, things that like fundraisers, bake sales, sporting events, those kinds of things. That's why it started. And then in 2018, there were additional things that were added to it, like jams and jellies, and some other things were slightly expanded. But in 2024, there's been a new law that's been passed and is being enforced, and it completely changed the program and opened it up to include a lot of perishable items and a lot of it's almost anything. It's going to be easier for me to tell you the things that are not allowed compared to the things that are allowed. So we will go over that. And then there are some program requirements and things that you have to have in order to apply. We'll go through that. And then we'll talk about some considerations as far as how you can sell your goods. So, as I mentioned, to allow residents of Arizona to sell products directly to consumers online, that is why it exists. And frankly, this is a really, really good way, smart way to launch your business. It's very inexpensive to begin, and because it opens up so many possibilities of how you can sell your products and the types of things you can have, it's kind of a no-brainer. So if any of you are at very early stages with your business and you want to try some things out, this is a great way to start generating revenue and then move forward with your business a little later on. So the bill is technically called the House Bill 2042 and completely changed everything. People also refer to this as the tamale bill. That was a consideration when they were passing this. Because if you figure people that are making tamales, it's very seasonal and it might just be 3 months out of the year. But for them to go through the entire process with Maricopa County or whatever county they're in to get proper permits, find a kitchen to work out of, and then have the permits to sell, it was really, there were too many barriers to do that. So the state government has gotten together and tried to figure out how to make it, how to kind of level the playing field for everybody, how to make that an opportunity for folks to make some money. So here we're going to get to the probably the most interesting page out of this presentation, what is not approved. So anything that is alcohol at the end product, like something that you would consume to get the effects of alcohol, you're not going to be able to make that under cottage food. And then depending on the concentration of alcohol used in your recipes, That's not always allowed either. But essentially, if you are a baker and you want to make your own vanilla extract or orange extract or something, you can do that because nobody's taking that bottle of extract at the end and drinking it to get the effects of it. So that kind of product would be allowed under the program. So raw milk or raw milk cheeses are not allowed. Fish and shellfish are not allowed, even as ingredients. Marijuana infused products or marijuana edibles, marijuana drinks, anything like that are not allowed, and no pet food or pet treats. So it doesn't mean that you cannot make these products. It just you cannot be a cottage food producer to make these products. These are all of these items are regulated at different levels by different departments. Like pet treats and pet food are regulated by the Arizona Department of Agriculture. Marijuana products are regulated by the Arizona Department of Health Services, but it's a completely separate program. You need a special kitchen for that, and there are other rules that apply to your food products. So there are generally three simple steps in order to apply as a cottage food producer. The first one is you need a food handler certification, which I'm sure most of you have that already. You have to create an account on the Arizona Department of Health Services website, and then you're going to fill out and submit an application. So that first step, the food handler training, if you haven't already done it, there are several websites that offer this training. It takes about 30 minutes to do. It's most of them are online little modules that you'll go through, listen, review the content, and you take a little 10-question quiz at the end. It is less than $10 to obtain that, and it's a pass-fail right away when you take the course online. And as I mentioned, there are several accredited classes that qualify. There's something like 20 options. So if anybody's having an issue finding an appropriate class, let me know and I can connect you with the list. It's also available in multiple languages. So I'm going to walk through really quickly on how you're going to create your Arizona Department of Health Services account. This is the website you're going to want to write down if this is the way that you're going with your food products, myhealthdepartment.com/Arizona. And I will show you when it populates. This is kind of the dashboard that you would get to before logging in. I'll just log in really quick so you can see what that looks like after you have access. Cool. So you'll see a couple options on this page. There's even a button for cottage food registrants. So if you have questions about the food that you want to prepare, you can always look through that list of registrants. Those are people that are currently selling as cottage food producers. So you want to be able to get to this page with your dashboard. This is where you're going to apply and adjust any of your forms that you may have submitted. So that was step 2 already. So step 3 is really filling out the form. As I mentioned, you do need the food handler card for this step. Even if you've gotten your food handler card before, if you don't have access to it, you might want to just take it again because there's a little code, there's a verification code that you get on your food handler's card that you can email or download a PDF or a JPEG of it. You're going to need that, and you need the code that is on it because you're also going to input when your registration expires. So let's go into the form and we can go through these questions so you get an idea of how to fill it out. It's fairly straightforward, but the thing that throws people for a loop is there are 19 of these attestations that are on the form that you have to agree to. And some of them refer to the actual House bill language, so it can be a little confusing, like, am I actually following this correctly? So on this dashboard page, you would click on the cottage food registration. and then you're going to go to submit a new cottage food application. And the first question it's going to ask you is if you have previously enrolled. So if you have, you can put that information in. There's a drop down, you'll say yes, and then you'll put in your existing number. Essentially, what that does is it's just going to connect you together with that same permit. And if you need to, if it's easier to actually revise the old permit to what you're doing now, that is a possibility also. So one of the first questions is your product, if your product is made in a facility for individuals with developmental disabilities. Some folks do use those people as their labor and from different programs. So you're going to need to put yes if you do, and then you'll see this little drop down. If you do go this route, there is an additional verbiage that has to be on the label. So it's just this product was made in a facility for individuals with developmental disabilities. So you just have to identify that that is the way that it is. Then you're going to do normal stuff, first name, last name. You don't have to put a business name in here. The home street address, this address is very important. This is where you're physically going to be making all your cottage food products. So no PO box, no mailing address if you get your mail at a different location. This has to be where you're going to make your food. Some folks from previous times of doing cottage food, they were nervous about having the label, put this information on your label. You won't have to. The only people that will know this address, this physical address, is the Department of Health Services. On the next section, you're going to get to after you fill out your information, email, phone number, you're going to list all the food products that you want to make under the Cottage Food Program. And if you read this box above, it says be specific. They use the example of pies or jams and jellies to put the actual flavor that you are making. Same thing if you're doing sandwiches or tacos or something, put the type of meat that you're using so they understand and they have enough information to review your application. There is one individual that reviews all of the cottage food applications and approves or denies them. So the more detailed you can be in this list of food products, the better. It's easier for her to recognize if this should be approved or not. And again, there's a little link that you can get to the Arizona Department of Health Services Cottage Food Program page if you have questions about what is approved or what is not. And it's got this little disclaimer about pet food and pet treats not being covered again. So here's the part of all the attestations that can be a little confusing for people. There are 19 of them. All of them have to be answered yes. If you cannot, in good conscience, answer yes and figure out what you need to learn so that you can, because that's actually the only option you have to fill in all these boxes. It doesn't give you a no answer or a no option rather. So the first one is saying that you've reviewed any food safety and safe food handling practices. The Cottage Food Program website does have all of this available. There's some little like infographics that you can even print out and post up in your home kitchen if you want to, especially if you have other folks that are preparing the food with you as your employees. Also a good idea to just get them a food handler's card. The next attestation is that you agree to meet the requirements of this House bill on how you're making it, how you're packaging it, and how you're selling your food. Number 3 is that you've finished a food handler training course and you will abide by those rules that you learned. Number 4 is goes a little bit wider, that you are following safety and sanitary guidance from the training course, as well as any of the food safety and safe food handling practices that you have access to on the Cottage Program website. Number 5, this is what I was mentioning about your home kitchen. All cottage food has to be prepared in your home kitchen. So one thing about this, if any of you use outdoor smokers or grills or something, You're not going to be able to utilize those as means to prepare your products because those likely are not housed in your kitchen. So it's all the food preparation equipment has to also be in that kitchen. Number six, I will make, package, and attach a legible label in accordance with the law. I know Darius has a question about the label, and I'll get into that specifically of what you have to have on the package. Number seven is saying that you will dispose of your food waste in an appropriate manner. You're not flushing it down the toilet or throwing it somewhere that it shouldn't be. Number eight means that if you do have employees aside from yourself, it means you're still responsible for the things that they're doing and how they're preparing your products. Nine is about online advertising. So whatever you're putting out there as marketing for the products that you're making, it has to be truthful. 10, you are transporting, selling, and delivering foods in accordance with the law. I'll get into that a little bit because there are some considerations to have or to keep in mind when you are making sales. Number 11, you are agreeing to not make any of the non-allowed products. This is the one people get a little confused about because there's a line in here, meat byproducts, poultry, or poultry byproducts. Meat is allowed. Meat preparation is allowed in Cottage Food Program. So it's referring to how it is specifically written in the House bill. Number 12, this talks about how you're selling your product. Initially, when you just fill out the Cottage Food Program, you're initially approved and you have your cottage food registration number. The way that you have to sell is directly to the consumer. You cannot sell through another retailer. There is a way to work around that, and I'll get to that in a little bit. 13 is you're not preparing food products containing marijuana or selling marijuana products. Again, that's regulated by the Arizona Department of Health Services through their marijuana program. 14, you're not going to use any ingredients unless it's from an approved source. So if you go to an actual retailer, grocery store, wholesale store and get your ingredients, those are all allowed. Things that would be not approved, if you're just foraging for food or you're going to a neighbor who happens to have chickens, you wouldn't be able to utilize that. It would have to go through an appropriate avenue. 15, you're agreeing to not using your home kitchen as a commissary. So some people have food carts, hot dog carts, or snow cones, or like the little elote buggies that you see in different neighborhoods. You would not be able to use that home kitchen address as a commissary. There are a lot of other rules that apply to commissary kitchens that you would have to meet. And commissary kitchens are generally commercial and licensed by the county. 16, I mentioned this
So
before about not storing
let's
your,
have,
yeah,
I have a question. So basically what that means is I can't use my home kitchen to take my food products outside of it and sell off of a mobile unit or anything like that.
correct,
It has to go directly from me to somebody who's like, oh, yeah, just no mobile food unit, right? That's
correct.
okay.
Yeah, so I think Jennifer's in this class. So with your hot dog cart, this would not have signing up as a food produced cottage food. You would not have been able to use that address as your commissary kitchen. Yeah, it's just how it's sold. And there are cottage food producers that also have a mobile permit, depending on how they sell. So we'll talk about that scenario too. But yeah, essentially exactly what Jose said, that you can't take the food that you make in your home kitchen and use it or sell it through your cart, your mobile cart, without an additional permit. And I'll explain that in a little bit.
There's a question in the chat. It says, does this exclude farmers markets?
No, it doesn't exclude farmers markets. there is a shorter window of time that you can sell your product. And then the issue with farmers markets is as long as you don't have to do any additional preparation of the food at the farmers market, then you'd be good. So essentially, you're going to make your food product and package it exactly the way that you want the consumer to have it. And either they're going to take it home and eat it, or they're going to eat it right away. So if you, I'll use the example of breakfast burritos. If you make a bunch of breakfast burritos in your home kitchen, you heat them all up, you wrap them in foil, you keep them in a warmer to stay warm. You can take all of that and sell that at a farmer's market. 17 is essentially saying that you agree to all of the requirements of the program. You abide by the regulations set forth in it. And if for whatever reason you would need an inspection or disciplinary action, like if there would ever be an investigation into your food products, that you agree to allowing for that and those processes to go through. 18 again is you're acknowledging that if there's any enforcement action that would need to be taken, that you agree and understand that you have to comply with those requirements. I doubt that any of you would ever have to deal with 17 or 18. And then 19 is you would, same with 19, that you may be subject to civil and or criminal penalties, depending on like if you were really trying to be deceitful here and you were selling products that were infused with marijuana for whatever reason and it wasn't declared as such, like that would put you in hot water. And those kinds of things they would have to investigate more thoroughly. So those are all 19 attestations, very formal. There's an applicant signature box right here. It is, you can actually click on your mouse and draw in your signature, and then you're going to print your name. This bottom section is where you would add the food handler information. So it asks for the expiration date specifically, and then you need to upload a file that has that. So as I mentioned before, a PDF or a JPEG will work for that. And then you're going to hit submit. Once that's submitted, it takes up to 30 days for them to review and approve or not approve. And that all happens via your email. So you would get emailed an approval and that your certificate right away. And I have seen people fill out these applications and turn around and get a or get a an approval the very next day. So sometimes it can be quick. It is again when you're listing the food items that you're going to make sure you are thorough. So here are the labeling requirements. So Darius, I think you had a question about this. What do you absolutely have to have on the label and what can you do with a QR code? So all of this unfortunately has to be specifically on your product and visible. And this would be for things that you're packaging for somebody to take home later. For instance, if you make like fry bread or tortillas, when somebody buys that directly from you, that consumer buys it directly from you, they're not necessarily going to sit there and eat all of them. So you want to make sure that it's labeled so they have this information to access later. If you were selling a hot breakfast burrito, you're anticipating somebody's going to eat right away. You're likely not going to have put a label on it. And that is fine because they're just going to consume it right away. But for those items that need to be labeled for when the consumer is going to take those and consume them at a later time, you need the date that you have produced the food, which would likely be that same date unless you're doing something that is frozen or if you have a shelf stable designation. And I'll get to that on the next slide. You'll put your name and registration of the preparer. So if you are the person that is approved on Cottage Food, it's your name, and then it's that registration number. So I mentioned this earlier, you're not putting your home address down as your designation of where you don't have to put that at all, and I don't recommend it. You're going to list all of your ingredients, starting with the highest concentration of ingredient down to the lowest. if you're using any product like chocolate chips, you are going to have to list the ingredients that are specifically in those chocolate chips. Then this line specifically has to be on all of your labels. This product was produced in a home kitchen that may come in contact with common food allergens and pet allergens and is not subject to public health inspection. That whole line, as it's written, has to be on a label. And then the website for the Cottage Food Program has to be on the label also. So, Darius, really, what you can get away with on a QR code and is going to be link it to your, if you have a business website, so they can learn more about you and how to order your products. Unfortunately, all of this has to be on the label, but you do have the ability to design these labels any way that you want, as far as size, how big they are, if they're printed directly on the package, or if it's on a sticker that you're putting on everything. But there's no wiggle room to get beyond this label requirement. So it seems like a lot of things, but yeah, be creative with font sizes and whatever to get those on there. And you can work with companies that will print these out for you. You can print your own labels. There are different ways to save money with that. But yeah, as far as that QR code, it would just be additional information about you and your business outside of these required things. So this section is about how you're selling your food. As I mentioned with those breakfast burritos earlier, those would be packaged and transported as intended for sale. So hot food has to be transported hot, cold food is transported cold. And this is the question, this will affect the person that was asking about farmers markets. Does it exclude farmers markets? No. But when you have products that are, because initially when you're approved for cottage food, they are assuming all of your food is perishable. So the longest it would be edible is 7 days. So you are making these perishable items for people to eat. They're prepackaged. You show up at your market, you give them your packaged goods. That has to happen within a 2 hour window. So how you could get around that if you were selling hot food at a market and a market's 4 hours, you could have somebody that's back at your home kitchen making a second batch, or get creative with how you're selling. Maybe not all of your items are sold for immediate consumption. Maybe there's an option. Like some are frozen to take home, or some are ready and thawed to be eaten. If this designation without any additional testing or anything, all of your food is considered perishable. And I mentioned here, no wholesale if perishable. You have to make all your sales direct to the consumer. So this means you can't use another retailer to sell for you. So you wouldn't be able to sell in large quantities to another shop that would then have it marked for sale there. This next question about needing more preparation. For instance, if you make awesome barbecue and you have these pulled pork sandwiches that you want to sell, if you intend to show up at your event and actually assemble the sandwiches on site, you're going to need a mobile food permit. If you have agua frescas that you want to allow for people to choose what flavor they get when they come up to your table, again, you're going to need a mobile food permit. So it is common for people to be registered and approved as cottage food producers, and then also have that mobile food permit from the county on top of it. Those scenarios, though, with a mobile food permit, you generally need a commissary kitchen that's connected to it. So this is that piece. You can't also use your home address as the commissary kitchen. But if this is your scenario, you make a bunch of hot food, awesome, delicious food that you want to build right at the event and build a plate for somebody to have. Getting a mobile food permit or a peddler's permit to do so is not necessarily cost prohibitive. There are some that are very reasonable. And then a commissary kitchen, it probably wouldn't be, there are a lot of other options out there. There's actually one on the west side called Ralph's Snack Bar. anybody can utilize that address as a commissary kitchen. You just apply online and pay. But if you did have a product that you want declared shelf stable, and then this would allow you a couple of things. This would allow you to sell it wholesale to another retailer that's going to advertise that it's available in their shop for you, or you can ship your products throughout the state. If your these products essentially are like tea blends or oops, back, sorry, tea blends or different sauces, depending on how you're closing it. You want it to be shelf stable or a granola product, something like that. If you want to get that designation, you have to have both of these tests done, a pH and a water activity test. These are done through the state, so through the Department of Health Services Cottage Food Program. Each test is $30, so you're talking a total of $60 to get your product approved as shelf stable. Just as a comparison, I work with a lot of folks that are permitted through Maricopa County, and for their products, those permits can be very expensive. And anytime those folks want to send their product for testing to get similar shelf stable designation, it's very expensive. It can be $1,000 or more. So again, this is a great way to start out or try new products for your business without a huge cost investment. And just to clarify, whether you are shelf stable and you're selling it wholesale, or if you are somebody that wants to take your products on the road, you still have to make all of your sales within Arizona. So just again, some things to keep in mind about pet food, marijuana, special processes like that outdoor smoker, or to sell outside of Arizona. You can sell outside of Arizona, but you would have to go through a commercial kitchen that is also licensed and registered with the FDA. And then there are some helpful links, which I can make these available for you if anybody wants to access the food safety or cottage food guidance. And then there's some other things on here about mobile food permits and our Good Food Finder directory. If you have not already checked out our Good Food Finder directory, it's Good Food Finder az.com. And you can look in the directory for any other food producers throughout the state if you're looking to find local honey, local coffee, anything like that. That is all, it's like a hub for all sorts of food producers. Pretty cool. So that is the presentation. So let me look at the questions in the chat.
A question here about does it have to be packaged individually or could it be packaged like 2 or 3 cookies per package?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, definitely package them in the quantities you want them to sell. Sorry. So no, they don't have to be individual unless you just want to sell individual cookies. And Tinya, does that make sense to you about how I said you could sell at farmers markets?
Yes and no. The law is the law.